I'm the head of product at Everledger. I joined about 8 months ago in August, and I have the distinct pleasure of leading the product and design and other teams at Everledger. Look, it's Friday afternoon. It's Brisbane. My brain is still a little bit COVID affected from having it a couple of weeks ago. So what I thought I'd do this afternoon is just tell you a little bit of a story. And I believe, like all good stories, there should be twists and roundabouts, and there should be, bits that you're like, what is she on about? And bits that hopefully resonate with you, and hopefully there's something in it for everyone. So I'm going to jump around a little bit. But what I want to talk to you today about is some of the things that we've done, particularly over the last year, and share some of the things that we're really proud about, maybe touch on some of the things that we're finding pretty hard, and tell you what we think is coming next. And audience participation, totally welcome. If you want to raise your hands in the air if you're like, oh yeah, that resonates, or you're like, tell me more about that, and I will go down that little path for you. So great introduction. For those of you who haven't heard of Everledger before, we're a blockchain-based supply chain transparency business. And our purpose is to really create greater transparency and visibility, and ultimately lead to sustainable practices in the supply chains where we think that matters most around the world. We were probably best known for the work that we've done in the diamond industry, which is where we started. Our founder, Leanne Kemp, had a really strong background in that industry and saw blockchain as a great technology to try and solve some of the challenges that were endemic in that industry. And we're really proud to say that worldwide now our platform is used in a very, very large it contains, I guess, a register digitally of a very, very large percentage of the diamonds that are traded around the world. From there, we've continued to grow into different industries. So unsurprisingly, we've moved into parallel industries like the gemstone industry. And then we've also made the jump into other industries which have big similarities but big differences as well, like apparel, I can never say that word properly, apparel, I'm visual so I see it and then I can't say it, apparel and wines and things like in the luxury sort of good space, and more recently really specifically looking at that really complex ecosystem that looks mining minerals all the way through to putting them in things like cars, specifically into electronic vehicle batteries. So it's a really complex domain, but there's a couple of things, that I wanted to share that we've done this year and over the last 12 months in particular that we think have made a difference to our customers. And I guess for me, I am a technologist by training. I have a weird degree. It's in arts actually with a computer science major. I do have a technology by training background, but my job is about telling people that story about what we do and what problem we're solving. So I like to focus less on the technology that underpins it and talk about what we're solving. And I guess having listened to a little bit of today's presentations and hearing some of the other presentations from the days previous, I think that's a common thing. We're not here we are here because we love blockchain, but we're not here just because of blockchain. We're here because we want to solve challenges in the world, and blockchain is just one of the tools that we use to do that. And for us, one of the big challenges that we still see is that education piece, an adoption piece. So when we go out and talk to people and they're like, oh, it sounds really great, but geez, that sounds hard. So how do we make it easy? And in our space, we're trying to tell a story really often across a very complex supply chain with lots of different actors at different points. And so a lot of the work that we do is about trying to get people to use the platform or contribute data that's verified and validated and then immutable in a way, though, that's easy for them to do. So one of the things we did this year with our diamond space is that we launched a widget. Sounds a bit old school, right? It's definitely a Web 2 technology, but game changer. So what we can do now is we've had a number of companies around the world who already are using our platform, for example, in their wholesale space to look at sourcing diamonds and choosing which diamonds they source and knowing where they came from and all sorts of things like that. But with, a lot of them, of course, have their own retail platforms that are web-based, and particularly with everybody sitting at home in the pandemic, of course, the rise of, further purchases online has fueled that demand for people to make even bigger kind of commitment purchases like diamonds and gemstones and high-value goods. So we've been able to say to them, hey, with 1 or 2 lines of code, you can really easily actually embed the story of that diamond in your web space and you can search for it. So that's a great, nice story for us to tell. I think the other side of that, though, and this is something I think the team's really, really proud about, it's not a great background, is, there's the other thing that's, I guess, apparent to all of us is the world has changed and continues to change, and the world we live in is very difficult. And I guess I'm speaking here not just about COVID, but the current war that's happening in Ukraine. Sorry, I still get emotional, I'm a lady. But I think, I guess one of the things that the team is super proud of is that not only what we did when the, I guess the war has broken out, is we realised that there are a lot of diamonds internationally that come from Russia. And so as a platform provider, people who are using our platform to source diamonds, we need to support our customers in making informed choices about where their stock is coming from. And this is something that would absolutely not have been possible to do 5 years ago. So over the course of the weekend, our teams came together and but actually put through into production working software with some small tweaks to our existing platform that now allows our manufacturers and retailers to choose whether they're going to buy and source Russian diamonds or filter them out from what they're offering to consumers. So small changes, but something that we can literally put in place overnight that just wouldn't have been possible in years gone by. So really proud of that. I see lots of nodding. So I think another example that we've worked on in the last year or so is kind of expanding out from gemstones and diamonds into supporting some of the Australian industries that we work with. So again, we've worked with Pearls of Australia, who are a great operation based in Cygnet Bay, up near Broome in Western Australia. They've got a really beautiful story about their product. It's actually a carbon sink. It's a carbon sequestration. Actually, pearls, sink carbon from the atmosphere as they're formed. So it's almost like a negative carbon input to the environment as well. But they've got a great story about where their pearls come from with low carbon inputs in terms of, the amount of transport that they go through. One of the challenges that they have as a business is that when pearls are sold into a wholesale market, often in Singapore and Hong Kong, I think, they sort of all just get mixed in together. And again, it's really difficult to tell the origin of the pearl. Their hypothesis is that people are willing to pay more for a pearl that is ethically sourced, sustainably sourced and grown in Australia without harsh chemicals, with good practices in terms of stewardship of the environment which it's grown in. And so they've used our platform, to take that, to load the pearls onto the platform, evidence claims about it as it's grown and sourced, and that's put that in the hands of the many, many retailers that they work with. So another simple pivot for us, a relatively simple pivot that's allowed us as a business to expand into another market, but hopefully us as custodians of the world's limited resources to be able to enable consumers to make really good choices in what they're buying. I think the other kind of example that I wanted to maybe talk about today is that we are also, I guess, as a business, really thinking about where we play. I think, as any kind of startup, scale up, it's difficult to find that product market fit, right? You're kind of like, oh, we've done something here. How do we make that extensible? How do we play? And I think, we've now got the benefit of how many years? 6, 7 years of operation, many, many clients from big to small, that we've worked with, and we're really starting to see some of the, the parallels that we can, bring to, and the learnings that we can bring in terms of not only platform, but IP and knowledge in terms of how we work with people into different supply chains. We've had a really long-standing belief in circularity and the fact that blockchain can really help, in that renewable and circularity part of global economies. And as a result of that, we've been involved in, Leanne in particular, our founder, has been involved in things like the World Economic Forum, blockchain committees and things like that since 2015. One of the things that spun out of that was a group called the Global Battery Alliance, which is essentially a coalition of the willing, including auto OEMs and all sorts of people in the manufacturing chain, sort of trying to develop standards to say, okay, what's the best way that we as a business can form standards around things like electronic vehicle batteries, which, as you know, are definitely the way of the future. We're trying to phase out, older technology cars, but there's also inherent challenges in that market in terms of the materials that go into those electronic vehicle batteries are sourced through mining. Those materials are often sourced from regions with high conflict or with, questionable practices as it relates to child labour and those sorts of things. But also they're very difficult and opaque supply chains. Again, a domain for us sort of to play in. So one of the really big programs that we've been involved in this year, and we're really proud about, is that we were successful last year in winning a blockchain grant from the federal government. The federal government put out a call for blockchain grants in the critical minerals space, and I think in the food and industry excise, customs and excise space. And we were really fortunate to win that grant along with a wonderful set of 12 partners, Katrina from Everledger being one of those, Cyro and Data61, Oracle, Warwick, Turing University. I'm going to miss all of them, but a number of them partnering with us in trying to deliver what we consider a really groundbreaking trial within a very fixed 9-month timeframe. So that's where I'm getting to the hard part of the story. So we've got this great experience understanding what supply chains are about. We know a bit about mining already because diamonds are mined, gemstones are mined. These are not unfamiliar things to us. But I think, the nature of supply chains is that every single supply chain has its own inherent risks and challenges, and those are very specific to the supply chain that, that exists there. And so we've got this really challenging sort of project in front of us. I think, one of the things I'll call out that's been hard is specifically people. I think the last panel that just spoke before, really resonated is, how do we actually, when we want to as a business for quickly scale up, in response to winning something like a grant. Hopefully many of you as founders will experience that challenge as well. It can't be a long burn. We need to sometimes be able to find staff who can help us do things quickly, and that has absolutely been a critical challenge for us on the project. What hasn't been a challenge is being able to find people in the market who are very, very excited about the mission and vision of what we as a business have, but also what blockchain as a technology brings to what we're trying to achieve, but they can see parallels in other industries. So that's where we've been really lucky to actually have a number of people come on board who are willing to contribute and are bringing experience maybe beyond what we're able to literally afford them for, but are willing to contribute to the mission and the vision that we believe in. At the other end of the supply chain for critical minerals is, of course, those electronic vehicle batteries. And I guess, again, hard fought lessons there, but we've been involved for probably 2+ years now in a series of pilots moving through to production of a system that looks at the end of life components and reuse as it relates specifically to electronic vehicle batteries. So we had some work probably about 2 years ago now with the Department of Energy in the US. We won a grant there to look at a very, very specific technical kind of challenge that they had. From there, we went on to do some work in New Zealand with I've forgotten which New Zealand department it was, but with a number of also commercial entities in New Zealand to look at battery stewardship there. And from that has come to us an ongoing pilot with Ford Motor Cars. And we're about to go live with that, where we are tracking literally the new electronic vehicle batteries that have gone into, I think it's the Mach 1. I'm not a car person, apologies. A new cool car from Ford that is looking at actually tracking those electric vehicle batteries down to like an ingredient or component level. And of course, the challenge in that domain, if I talk about it, similar thing, end of life, what happens to a car battery? I don't know if you know, in Australia, I think there's probably about a 98% recycle rate on the old lead sort of batteries. But that ecosystem is not so bad. Like if you leave a car by the side of the road, and in a field, as you often see them driving when you're on holidays with a lead battery in it, yep, not great for the environment, but it's not catastrophic. Lithium batteries, not quite the same deal. A small amount of lithium, of course, leaching into the environment can cause quite large degradation. And so there's a really different, I guess, challenge in that space around ownership as well, so who actually bears the responsibility for all of those batteries that are now going out into the world and what happens to them at end of life. So that's what we're working on with Ford, is saying, okay, well, Ford's not going to know where all the cars are and where all the batteries are. There might be some random person who is from a small servicing, department of the local Kansas City car place that actually picks up the battery. So what we've done is built a system where every person who comes into contact with that battery can scan the battery, look at its digital asset record on the blockchain and receive the information that they need to be able to do their jobs, and then record immutably, when they are doing their jobs, that it has been, for example, effectively and safely recycled and reused. In the long term, also give really good statistics to companies like Ford to be able to say to government, hey, these are the sort of legislative schemes that you need to put in place to keep the community safe, but let us also operate with continued, goodwill within the community. So look, they're probably a couple of the yarns I wanted to share this afternoon. I realise I've sort of jumped all over the place. I think for me, working in this space with the team, it's been a great experience. As I said, I'm not a blockchain expert. I'm new to this domain, but the power of the technology is great. I think probably, interestingly, I spent quite a bit of time with the federal government and Queensland government and Western Australian government as part of the pilot we've been working on. And I think for me, one of the other things that resonates really strongly and that I've heard repeatedly over this week is, yes, we in this room, understand blockchain is now. It's not a tomorrow technology. Adoption is becoming more widespread, but that education piece is real. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a room ready to talk about the solution that we're trying to build and ask people about the problems that they want to solve, and they either want a blockchain 101, which by the way I do really, really badly, but I give it a shot, or they want to tell me their 58 ideas for blockchain that don't relate to what we're doing at all, which is also great because they're enthusiastic, but I'm sure that you've all had that experience as well. So one of my aims this afternoon in sharing this story with you was to try and give you a couple of little tidbits of ideas when you're talking to someone at the barbecue or when you're talking to someone around a boardroom table and you're trying to say, how do I explain this simply to someone? Try and use that real world example where you can say, hey, Everledger did this. If you're or obviously you can, if you've got your own business and you're doing something successfully already, use that story. But if you don't, they're the stories, the war stories that I think we individually can take back and use as little tidbits. I came to the pitch night last night and I judged, and the pitches, by the way, were fantastic. And I went home last night and I've got a daughter who's 10, wants to be an engineer of some description. She wants to build bridges. I'm like, that's boring, build software. But anyway, she asked me what was going on at the pitch night. And I said, she's like, what were the ideas? And I told her, and she got it. And I think, that's the power of being able to say, really simply, what is a blockchain? What are the stories? How does it solve it? And I hope all of you that have children or, people that you work with, you can explain really simply what it is, and here's an example. And that's one of the really simple ways we can get the word out. And that's what I want to talk about this afternoon.